All right. So we have 2 to the 8th participants in our webinar. This is very exciting. Um, I'll go ahead and kick things off. My name is Janet Davis. I'm at Whitman College. I'm a member of the CRA Committee on Education, and my colleague Borja is here to assist with the moderation. I'd like to just very quickly introduce our panelists. Nery, actually, could I have our panelists quickly introduce themselves? Because I didn't learn how to say all your names ahead of time. I am derelict in my duties as a moderator. Um, actually,
No
we're
worries.
still, yeah, Nery.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Nery Chapeton-Lamas. Pronouns are he, him, his from
Thank you,
MiraCosta
Nery.
College.
Varsha Koushik from Colorado College.
Thank you, Varsha.
Drew Hilton from Duke University.
Thanks, Drew. And I understand Suzanne is having some technical difficulties. We'll be joined by Suzanne Rivoire from Sonoma State, I think, in just a moment here. Um, to kick things off, the way this panel is going to go, we'll have about 20 minutes of panel introductions. Each panelist will have about 5 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll have about 30 minutes for Q&A. So if you think of any questions during the panel introductions, go ahead and click the Q&A button and ask your questions there, and Borja will be reading and moderating those questions. Um, and after 50 minutes in these panel presentations, full panel Q&A, we'll have a short evaluation survey right here on Zoom, and then some additional time to follow up with one-on-one questions and small group discussions in breakout rooms. And we'll let you know the instructions for joining the breakout rooms when we get there. So with no further ado, let's get started. Here are the questions that I'm going to ask everybody to address in their short introductions. Um, for context, tell us a bit about your institution and the program you teach in. What do you teach? What are your students like? Tell us your job title. What responsibilities does your job title entail, including teaching load, advising, service, scholarship, or other activities? Do you have a PhD, and is that required at your institution? Does your career track offer you security of employment? And then finally, to wrap up each introduction, what led you to a career in teaching? So we'll just proceed with the order that the panelists introduce themselves at the beginning. So we'll start with Nery.
Hi, everyone. I'll try to keep it condensed, so I'll keep looking at my notes. So I teach at MiraCosta Community College in Oceanside, California. We're a community college public institution. We're a Hispanic serving institution, and our CS department has about four full-time four full-time tenure faculty and about 19 part-time faculty. I teach the gamut of lower division courses. I've taught from Java, C++, Android, computer architecture, assembly language, data structures. But right now I'm focusing on the introductory courses, our CS1 and CS0, 1, and 2 because they're the gatekeeping courses in CS programs, and we're focusing on bridging our equity gaps. So we're revamping a lot of curriculum. Our students are very diverse because we're an open institution. And so that means in terms of ethnicity and race, so we're 40% Latinx students at our college. And when our students start in CS, that doesn't mean they persist, but that's where we start off at about 3% Black, but also diverse in terms of accessibility. Ages, I think our average age is like 27. We have a lot of low income financial needs students. We have undocumented students, DACA, AB 540. We serve a large population that has shelter insecurity and food insecurity. And so our students come in with a lot of human needs too, social needs. I do not have a PhD. It's not required to teach at a California community college. Um, and so what my responsibilities entail is I'm a full-time tenure faculty, so I'm a teaching faculty. I teach a full load every semester, but I also have institutional service that I do in terms of collegial governance, so committee work, department work, and also community service and outreach. And so it's up to each of us how we kind of like what committees we go on or how we exercise that kind of community service. I'll also be department chair next semester, so that'll take some of my teaching load. But that's how it works. Sometimes I get reassigned time if I do grant work like I am right now. So I'll let go of a course to do some of that grant work. Um, and then my career track, I am tenured, but we still get evaluated every 3 years. So it's not like you're good now forever. But that's just part of the cycles that we have here. And what led me to teaching for my career was I always knew I wanted to teach. I just thought that the only way was to go through industry for many years and then go into teaching. But when I started that track after my master's program, I was doing both part-time and I just loved teaching. I just fell in love at the community college specifically. I saw students like me and knowing that there's so few Chicanos in computer science and engineering, I found my calling and I found like, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to work. And to be a role model for students like me, the role models that I didn't have. And so that's where I got to focus on and kind of try to change the way that we do computer science education in a kind of small level with the department. I think I hit everything.
Thank you, Nery. You hit everything. That was a lovely introduction. And next we have Varsha Koushik at Colorado College.
So I am in the math and computer science department at Colorado College, which is a small liberal arts college in Colorado Springs. It is a private institution. There are about roughly 2,000 students on campus. In the department, we have 6 full-time tenure track faculty in the computer science department. I am an assistant professor, and for my job, it does require a PhD, and I have a PhD. And I'm also a tenure track professor. Typically, I teach a combination of introductory, mid-level, and upper-level computer science courses. So this could be introductory programming or computer science 1 type course. I also teach like mid-level courses like software design and upper level courses and electives like human-computer interaction and accessibility. My responsibilities include teaching scholarship and service. So typically at Colorado College, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with, we follow something called the block plan, where students only take 1 course at a time, and each course is 3.5 weeks long. So it goes by pretty fast. It's pretty intense. So as faculty over a year, we teach 5 to 6 blocks, and then we are expected to do our scholarship with students over the summer and maintain it during the year. We have service at the departmental level and college level through different committees. What led me to a career in teaching and how did I choose this particular track? Well, I think kind of like going off of what Nery said, like I really enjoyed having that one-to-one connection with students, mentoring them and guiding them, which I knew I would find at a smaller institution. I also wanted to have a balance and spend enough time between teaching and research, which I think my current job does offer. And being at a smaller school, like I'm really enjoying the relationship that I have with students, which is with much smaller classes. We get to see the students more often and throughout their undergraduate journey in the department.
I was wondering, Varsha, could you just say like maybe another sentence or two? What are your students like at Colorado College?
Oh, so that's our students come from various backgrounds.
Yeah.
And they may or may not have a computer science background to begin with. So they come from diverse backgrounds. They also have like a very interdisciplinary interest. So we have a lot of computer science students who are also an art major or an art minor. So I think our students are very curious and very they uphold like the ethos of a liberal arts college, having this interdisciplinary interest even in computer science classes, looking through multiple, I guess, like lenses with computer science topics. So we get a diverse set of students.
Thanks, Varsha. I appreciate that addition. Um, I think Drew is up next. Drew Hilton at Duke University.
Hey everyone, I'm at Duke. You may have heard of it. Apparently, we have a basketball team that sometimes does well, something. It's a private school. I have no idea how many students we have or faculty across campus. I think our department has about 45 faculty in it. I'm in the ECE, Electrical and Computer Engineering department, although what I teach mostly looks like CS stuff. What I teach is primarily programming for our master's students, graduate software engineering, and compilers, although I've taught probably about 5 or 6 other courses. Whatever our students like depends a lot on which students you're talking about. So our master's students generally are mostly coming from some other engineering field and wanting to become professional programmers really quickly. So they're kind of hyper focused on that. The undergrads are a little more curious, excited to learn all sorts of interesting things. I've had some do really cool projects. My job title is Professor of the Practice. That is full-time regular rank teaching faculty, but I don't have tenure and won't ever have tenure. I teach a 2-2 load. So in the fall, I teach 2 sections of my programming course. In the spring, I teach 1 section of software engineering and 1 of compilers. Surface, yes, I do a lot of that. I was the director of our master's program for many years. I was the director of innovation and computing education for the engineering school for a handful of years. I've served on more committees than I can count. I have done other scholarship. I wrote a textbook. I have some Coursera courses. I had 2 PhD students who have since graduated. I've had undergrads do research projects with me, so I've done lots of other things. Also, this summer, I'm spending my summer at Google, just amongst all the things I'm doing. That's not really part of my job. That's just what I'm doing for my summer. I do have a PhD. Regular rank faculty at Duke need a PhD, but there are lecturer titles that only need a master's. I already said that I don't get tenure. And what led me to my career in teaching was as an undergrad, I was a TA for CS2 at Georgia Tech, and I really liked it and thought it was cool and went off and got a PhD. And I thought I was going to do like the tenure track thing because I thought it was just tenure track or bust. Um, and I graduated right after the 2008 financial crisis, so there weren't many jobs. So I went off to industry in a group that was amenable to teaching and taught compilers as an adjunct at Duke. And then they were looking for someone to design and to implement the masters in software in the ECE department. And I learned about this professor of the practice thing, and so I'm very passionate about making sure that other people know about teaching track careers.
Thank you, Drew. I unmuted myself. And last but not least, I'm glad that we're also joined by Suzanne Rivoire at Sonoma State. Would you please also introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for bailing me out. I was in the audience flailing like, hey, notice me, I'm here. So thank you so much. So I am Suzanne Rivoire. I teach at Sonoma State University, which is one of the 23 campuses of the California State University system. We're the designated liberal arts campus, so we're one of the smaller ones at about 5,000 students and about 250 in computer science. The Cal States generally, as a system, don't offer PhDs. We're no exception, and our computer science program is undergraduate only, which I really like. We are, of course, a public institution. I teach all over the computer science major. My background is in computer architecture and computer systems, but I've taught, I think, every lower division course we have and most of the upper division. I'm hoping to dodge theory for the rest of my career, and so far so good, but just about everything else. My job title is professor. And so that looks like a normal professor job, except the percentages of research, teaching, and service are different than they would be at a research institution. So teaching is expected, scholarship is expected, and service, committee work, et cetera, is expected. The percentages that get quoted to us unofficially, but no one will stand by it on paper, is 40% teaching, 30% scholarship, 30% service. And we can talk more about what kind of scholarship is feasible at this type of institution for sure, if folks are curious. I have a PhD, and a PhD is required to have the word professor in your title where I am. Lecturers can have masters only. And I am tenured, thankfully. What led me to a career in teaching, I started grad school with the idea that this might be something I wanted to do, and really stayed flexible the entire time. I was open to teaching at this type of institution. I was open to research institutions, and I was open to going into industry. Like Drew, I graduated into the financial crisis of 2008. And so I was happy to see that this position, which was already local to where I was living, opened up. And I said, let's give it a try. If it doesn't work out, Silicon Valley is also right here in town. So plan B is available. But it turned out to be something that was really the right thing for me.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you to all our panelists for those introductions. When we met ahead of time, we agreed on a first question. So I'm going to go ahead and ask that first question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Borja for some questions from the Q&A, the audience Q&A. So the first question that we agreed on was like, how do teaching assignments get made in your department, and how much say do you have in what you teach? Maybe let's start with Suzanne, just because she was the most recent one to speak.
Sure, why not?
You're in your department?
Oh, sorry, of course. We have 5 tenured and tenure track faculty, and then some lecturers as well. Yeah, on the one hand, a lot of say, but on the other hand, there are a lot of constraints. So our teaching load it's complicated, but let's say 2.5 courses per semester. And we have a lot of room to express our preferences in not only topic, but time of day and other things about when they're scheduled. But at the end of the day, the department chair has a really difficult set of constraints to solve. So, you may or may not get all of what you want. But I do feel like everybody's input is heard, and I've successfully managed to teach what I want to teach and dodge what I want to dodge for the most part over the 15 years that I've been here. Let's see, we do get to design our own courses. We have a lot of latitude, of course, in the regular courses that we teach. But in addition, if you want to teach an elective on something of your area of interest, that's possible every couple of years, basically. And I think one of the just things to know about certainly this type of institution, and maybe this type of position, is when you're teaching this many courses a semester, you're going to be teaching some that are outside of the area you were trained in. And that is a hurdle that I find new grads really have to get over. Like when you're at a research institution, you would never dream of teaching outside your very narrow area of expertise, because 10 people who can do it better than you off the top of your head. And at a small school, you might be the only one, adjacent to several areas of computer science. And so you really have to get comfortable with doing things that are a little bit of a stretch, which I think is a great challenge. But if you feel differently, this might not be the right kind of position for you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Varsha, you're in a similar sized department at an undergraduate only institution. Do you find things are pretty similar for you, or is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think they're pretty similar. So we do get a lot of say in what we teach, but there might be some constraints for introductory courses, like there have to be certain blocks of certain courses that have to be taught. But which course we actually teach, we have a pretty democratic process in our department, and we each get our say. We do get to design our own courses. There's a lot of flexibility in designing our curriculum, even if multiple people are teaching the same course in the year. We also get to teach an elective or a course in our area of expertise every year, for the most part. But I agree with Suzanne. There might be some constraints where certain courses have to be taught in certain time of the year or something like that. But there is a lot of freedom and flexibility in courses.
Thanks, Varsha. Drew, yes. How is your experience different?
Yeah. So we have so when we hire a pop, we are generally looking for kind of two to three courses that we really need to be covered well by them, but we also expect them to design a new course of their own choosing. And in fact, part of our interview process is to ask them to talk about that course design and learning objectives and all that sort of stuff. Um, I teach a pretty stable rotation. I have taught the programming class for master's students since my first year at Duke, and it's my class. No one else wants to teach it. It's going to be a thing I do. When things need to be changed up, we generally discuss it pretty collegially. So like one of my colleagues was like, "Hey, I want to teach this undergrad required 350 course," and I was like, "Cool, we'll move things around." But we generally try to keep people teaching the same thing because preparing new classes is a big deal in terms of work. Uh, Not just topic, but class size, format, etc. We have a lot of flexibility on class format. My programming class is a flipped classroom that uses mastery learning on assignments. That's not a very standard thing, but it's what I do. Um, that one I try to keep to about sections of 35 students. There's a little bit of friction with the department of like, well, look, like you could go to 40, right? You could go, and it's always like, well, yes, like if I had one more student, that's fine, but at some point we're gonna like by induction get to bigger students. Software engineering is about 45 and compilers was 25, I want to say. We do have bigger classes than that. The undergrad computer organization class is like 300 people, but I don't ever teach that one. Um, and do I get to or have to teach in an area beyond my expertise? Um, the closest I've ever had to that was the person who was going to teach our theory and algorithms class unexpectedly left the week before the semester started 2 years ago, and I said, I will do this as an overload, but I want you to pay me more than the normal overload rate. Thank you. So it's not like people aren't usually looking for me to teach unusual stuff, especially because I'm generally very full with what I've got.
Thanks, Drew. Nery, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, for our school, full-time tenured faculty get first pick of courses, and then from there, each department kind of does like round robin or seniority. And our course is about 25 per section. If it's online, we'll kind of push it to 30, and usually three classes to be full-time in computer science. We're required to have at least one fully on-ground class, but the rest can be hybrid or online. After the start of COVID, we had, we kept a lot of our online sections. So now we're about 50-50, when before it was like one or two sections online per semester. Um, and then we schedule all over the place, like day, afternoon, evening, online, on ground, so it's a pretty simple to get a good variety to pick from to fit my work-life balance. As far as like teaching, with academic freedom, we can teach how we want as long as we follow the course outline of record. And so that's caused some issues for multi-section, multi-instructor courses because the consistency can be very varied as students articulate. Um, and so that's part of the work we've done with the grants that we've gotten. So I design and teach and grade and do everything for my courses. It's taken a long time to change the department culture to be more collaborative. So it's not the usual, like, here's the syllabus, here's the book, good luck culture that we used to have. And so through some of that grant work, we rebuilt our CS1 and CS2 courses to implement culturally responsive approaches with active learning strategies, specifically implementing flipped classroom, discussions on social justice contexts that frame our Java programming labs. And so I have that autonomy and could push the boundaries of what CS education looks like because I'm senior faculty. I've shaped the department culture. And to be more culturally competent and equity minded, we've done a lot of professional development, and so that's a big part of what gives me that kind of autonomy to push it even further. And then for things outside of my expertise, I'm currently in a game development boot camp because it's funded through our grant. So I can redesign our game development class to break down themes of colonization in games and toxic game culture. So I have that side I can bring, but I don't have the game development side. So a lot of possibilities.
That sounds exciting, Nery. Thank you. Borja, I see the questions are piling up in the Q of A. Do you have a good audience question for us to address next?
Yes, so there's a number of questions, and I just want to remind the audience that these are all great questions. Please keep them coming, but also please remember that you can also upvote questions. So if you see a question there that you think I really want to hear the answer to that, that's going to sort of like help us select questions that people are sort of interested, in. There is a wide spectrum of questions. I'm kind of like having a hard time choosing which one's going to be the most interesting one. But there's one question, since we're on the topic of teaching assignments and teaching loads and so on, and there has been a couple of questions just on, what is the typical teaching load at your institution and so on and so forth. But there is a question about, if you are at an institution where you are assigned to teach a class that maybe you've never taught before, how do you go about preparing for that? How do you go about preparing for, a class that you haven't taught before? And if you want to throw in anything about, what is your usual teaching load, because there's been a couple of questions about that, I think folks would be interested in hearing about that as well.
Thanks, Borja. I wonder, yes, if Drew would like to take this first,
I'll
since he just
jump
recently
in
had this experience.
very concretely. I start with a spreadsheet that has every day in the semester, and I start putting topics in and putting assignments down the side, and I start going, ooh, I overshot the semester by, 50%. What can I like delete this, move this around? How is the ordering of these topics going? Start sketching out assignment ideas, thinking carefully about what the key learning objectives are and how I can assess them, how to scaffold those assignments. Writing a good assignment takes a lot of time, especially, yeah, Suzanne is nodding her head, especially because there's like, if I just wanted to do the assignment myself, that would be like easy, right? But like I start doing it and change my mind about things because I realize like this part was trickier than I thought. This requires this topic that's not going to be lined up with the timing of the assignment, which is why it's great to have a spreadsheet, because you can look and be like, that topic, oh, nope, that's like the last day of the assignment, too late. I don't know if it's easy to share screen, but I could even show you like the spreadsheet for one of my classes if you all are excited by that. But
Maybe let's not get that
yeah,
far
okay.
down into the
Yeah.
weeds.
But but there's a lot of infrastructure around it, right? Like here's sample inputs, here's sample outputs, here's grading infrastructure if you do auto grading. That takes a lot of stuff. You generally are going to want to either do that during the summer or like a previous semester. Trying to do that like on the fly is terrible. Yeah, and then as far as like the course materials, like lecture slides, whatever, like lectures not like lectures like the see, I don't want to say easiest because it's not easy. Like lots of people do bad lectures. It's the most vanilla mode of interaction. Flipped classrooms and such are harder. They require like a lot more preparation and energy on your part. But you know, it's something that comes a lot with practice. Your first time doing it, you're probably gonna struggle a little bit.
Thank you, Drew. That's actually all pretty consistent with my experience as well. But I maybe to get some different perspectives on this question, maybe could anyone speak to, Nery, I was wondering if someone could speak to either taking over a course that had been previously taught by a colleague or collaboratively designing a new course or redesigning a course.
Yeah, absolutely. Second a lot of what Drew said too. I think this happened to me last semester where like a week before semester started, my class didn't make. It was like we were experimenting, trying something in the evening, and it just didn't fill. And so, because I'm full time, I'm required to teach. So that took a section from a part-time faculty, and it was the discrete structures or discrete math course, which I failed the first time I took it at UC Irvine. And so never want to teach that class, never wanted to. But it was the only one that fit my schedule. And so luckily, again, because of that department culture, I was able to hit up some of my colleagues that have taught it before, and they gave me everything, their full Canvas shell, assignments, quizzes, lecture videos, everything, because we've built that culture where I've given them a lot of kind of stuff like that. And it was still a lot of work. And it's because, kind of like Drew was saying, developing the lecture, those kind of slides and stuff, I would say it's easier too, because to me, the hard part is if I'm doing the flipped classroom activities in class, I'm anticipating what students are going to get stuck on, where I got stuck on. And so one of the advantages of me failing that class was that one, I could kind of anticipate a lot of parts that would be struggle points. And so I can anticipate the questions and prep. So that kind of prep, you can imagine, has so many branches. And that can, if you're very stressful and anxiety inducing or you're prone to that, there's a lot that you can get lost in. So managing that kind of anxiety, it can be tough. But again, leaning on colleagues and collaboration really helped. And the other thing I would encourage, again, depending on your positionality, based on gender, race, or position, like full-time, part-time, being vulnerable with students and telling them like how you're struggling with this class so that they can see you as human too and not this sage on the stage that knows everything. And you'll see that a lot of students respond to that and that they'll open up with you and about where they're struggling. And so I told them first day how I failed the class, and I showed them my transcript and kind of showed them like, I'm relearning, you're gonna learn this for the first time together. And so that created a lot of fun moments in the class.
Thanks, Nery. I really appreciate that. Varsha, Suzanne, would you like to add anything? So the question was about like, how do you prepare to teach a new course or new to you course?
I think Drew had great practical advice. I'm
Yeah.
always really careful to start with the learning objectives for the course and then for major assignments, and then go down to the week by week planning, basically. But I really spend a lot of time making sure that the course outcomes are something I can stand behind.
I think everyone has given good practical and general advice. The only other thing that I would add is don't be shy to ask your colleagues for help. That's something I have done in the past. If they've taught a course before and if they're comfortable sharing materials from your peers or colleagues, they can be a great resource to start with, and then you can model off if you want.
Thanks, Varsha. Borja, do you have a next question for us?
Yes, and I do want to mention there's a number of questions that are more in the area of how do I prepare for a career in teaching? How do I apply to a career in teaching? So I just want to give a quick pitch for this is the first of a series of 3 panel discussions. So next week and the week after that, same day, same time, we're going to have panel discussions on how do you prepare for a career in teaching? How do you apply for a career in teaching? So if that's a topic that you're interested in, please make sure to join us at those panel discussions as well. But there's a couple of questions on just work-life balance in general. So there's a general question, which is just tell us about work-life balance. So if anyone has any thoughts, anything they'd like to share about work-life balance in the general, please do so. There's a more specific question on, how do you, for those of you who do have research and teaching responsibilities, like how do you balance both of those responsibilities, the teaching and the research?
Varsha, with your block schedule at Colorado College, I imagine this is a challenge. I wonder if you'd like to talk about this first.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll talk about how do I balance teaching and research, and maybe a little bit about work-life balance after. So I think being on the block schedule, because every course is only 3.5 weeks and we teach every day, it's intense. But then the blocks that I'm not teaching, then there's just a ton of time for class prep or research. But I think after many iterations of trying different things, what I found that even when I'm teaching, unless I'm spending maybe like 30 minutes or even lesser on something related to research, whether that's like brainstorming or reading papers, I think that will help me be consistent than sort of this like intense off on teaching mode, then suddenly you're on research mode. I don't think that's quite um, helpful for maintaining a consistent scholarship research program. So I think one of the ways I found a balance is because I'm on the block plan, just like what Drew mentioned. It seems like it's also kind of similar for the semester. Like I cannot prep while the block is going on because that would be like I'm playing catch up. So I have to do a lot of the prep for that particular block ahead of time. So that way I'm prepared with the assignments, the lecture portion, in-class activities, whatever it is that I'm doing. So then I can somehow manage like 30 minutes tops every day um, for research. And I think that's sort of kind of is a good connection to the work-life balance portion. I think when I started this job, I got some good advice from my colleagues, but who also said like you have to remember that to, take a break and sort of like your life activities are important. So I made a very conscious decision that I will give time for things that matter to me at the end of the day. Which means if that means that being more organized or prepping before, I will put that effort because I want to do the other activities. Like living in Colorado, like I've gotten into running, trail running recently. So I want to give enough time for that, which means I will have to put more effort into planning or organization of work life uh, in order to save time for personal life. But I'll also let others chime in.
Yeah, thank you, Varsha. I think that provides kind of I can resonate a lot with that. Who has something to add?
I can add that I think I learned through like trial and error. I think Varsha's message of like being intentional is really powerful, but I learned through like failure a lot. So the first Trump presidency really activated me, and I saw like this new tenure position I was in. Like I had power to do something to affect students' lives, to help them, to support them beyond the classroom. And so I got really involved with the campus, joining diversity equity committee, helping start a group that supported undocumented students on campus when Border Patrol showed up. So it was a lot of work to be done. And I just kind of clicked in my brain like, this is just my hobby now. Whatever time I had for hobbies is just going to go towards this. And I burnt out like pretty fast. I mean, it took a couple of years, but of just operating like that on all cylinders. And I learned that I just couldn't maintain that. COVID hit, and I was in a depression, and I lost family members, and it was just a lot that it just kind of came tumbling down. And I got lucky that it coincided with a sabbatical. That you definitely need to take your sabbaticals if you have that option as soon as possible. And that helped me reset and kind of rebalance and come in more intentionally. And so now I'm getting better at saying no to things. I still have a hard time, but getting better at saying that or strategizing. Well, I can't do it, but here's a colleague that might be down. Let me connect you with someone so I don't feel as guilty saying no.
Thanks, Nery. That also resonates with me a lot, learning how to say no and really valuing those sabbaticals. Drew, Suzanne, anything to add?
Yeah, so when I first saw that question in the chat, I was tempted to just respond with a frowny face, but decided that it probably should be, more of a complete discussion. Uh, Work-life balance has not been my strong suit. Before kids, I was working a lot. Like I wrote my textbook by basically like every evening at the coffee shop until they closed, writing textbook, right? Coursera was a lot of work. Having PhD students was a lot of work. Kids have kind of forced that balance to change. Um, in that like I can't do as much now. I will say, completely transparently and honestly, when my department chair back in like 20 was like, hey, like, should you go up? I'm wondering if you should go up for promotion to full. Let me look at what you've done. Like, oh, maybe, like, yeah, maybe, but like, maybe you should do one more big thing. I was like, there's not going to be another big thing. Like, sorry, I have kids now. It's now or never. Like, I didn't say I don't care, but like, just, and they put me up and I'm full pop and stuff. But work-life balance is real hard, especially when you don't have tenure because it's a lot harder to say no to things.
Thanks, Drew. Any concluding thoughts, Suzanne, or shall we move on to the next question?
Oh, I think I agree with what everyone else has said. Number one, there's a learning curve, so you can expect the first couple years to just be really difficult as you figure out your systems of working. And that, like Drew, I think and Nery, my biggest challenges with work-life balance came when I was kind of going above and beyond. Like I was way more research engaged than I had to be, and really, it was from the same motivation of just really being into what I was doing, but I'm not sure that it was a smart, sustainable thing to be doing long term.
Thanks, Suzanne. So, Borja, I think we're maybe rolling into one last question for the panel part of this event.
So, if we're rolling into a final question, I did see there was a question that I think it's probably good to end on this note, which is knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to someone who is getting started in teaching or is thinking about pursuing a career in teaching or a teaching heavy career? So, do you have any sort of like nuggets of advice to relay.
Sure. I always have advice. Um, I think that just, the first thing I would say is know that teaching is a lot more than lecture, right? So a lot of people think like my exposure to my professor is they stand in my class and they talk. I need to be able to stand in front of people and talk. But for, everything from like interview, like I mentioned, we have a course design interview. Like when we're like, hey, well, you're going to design a course. We tell people in advance, come with ideas. It's not just like surprise, you're going to design a course, but like what would be the learning objectives and how would you assess them? And when people are like, the what now and how do I do what? It's like you're not a serious teacher, right? When people are like, well, I have the following learning objectives at these levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and I assess them with the following, we're like, cool, teaching and learning, right? And then that kind of permeates to all these other things that I mentioned, right? Of like making assignments is hard. You need to like if you've been thinking about learning objectives and you're like, oh, I just asked them to do an evaluate level learning objective. That's not a good starting point. We should probably start with something lower down Bloom's taxonomy first and work our way up. That kind of learning theory will help you do all these things better.
Okay, so Drew's advice is remember that teaching is a lot more than just lecturing. Who's next? Thanks, Suzanne.
Yeah. So if you're going to be at a smaller institution, you are really going to do a lot of blazing your own path. You're not going to have colleagues in your subfield who do exactly what you do. Your mentors from your graduate work are not going to be able to help you necessarily because they're definitionally at a different type of institution. And so you can expect to do a lot of really thinking about what you want from your career and thinking about how on earth you're going to get it. It's really helpful to understand what it takes for tenure and promotion at your institution and then understand what you want to do. Those should overlap, but they don't have to be the same thing. And then the thing I really want to tell my former self is that all these things you want for your career and for blazing those trails, you're going to get them. It's just all going to happen like 2 years later than you want it to, was the consistent pattern that I found just in trying to do these things that people at my institution weren't doing, and to try and meet my own standards for what I wanted. Just things take time.
Thanks, Suzanne. That was also one of my experiences transitioning from grad school to a faculty career is my planning horizon went from months to years. So thanks for that, Suzanne. Nery, Varsha, what advice would you share?
Yeah, I'd say be really strategic um, in those applications and what they look for, and how you build up your experience and sell yourself. Depending on the department and the position, they may be looking at experiences outside of the specific classroom or whatever the job responsibilities are. So, like for us, we look at like not just TAs and stuff, but like if you did tutoring, the community service and outreach you do to the community, right? And those things aren't necessarily have to be connected to CS or these specific positions, but we can use that as ways to kind of like bring you in as a candidate that is different from the other ones. Um, but a lot of that strategy is going to come from mentorship, especially for me being Chicano and first generation college, like I'm first gen everything. And so you really need that mentorship. It just the higher you go up, there's less of us. So if anything, you need the mentorship even more. And that means most likely going outside of your institution. And there's so many networks online to meet faculty, and meet other people that are in those similar kind of positions to put you on game. And that makes a huge difference. And the last piece I'd say is like teaching is teaching. Industry experience and research is not teaching. So the sooner you get in the classroom, the sooner you're dealing with all the things that the panelists have said, the sooner you get like a taste for it and you realize that like this is a whole field and career on its own. There's a whole skill set you haven't probably exercised in a graduate program or been taught about. So this is an opportunity to like really go hard. So
Thanks, Nery. And Varsha.
I would say it's going to take some amount of iteration to figure out what kind of a career within your institution you would like to have. It's going to take some iteration to figure out what kind of educator you are, what your pedagogy is, what is your style. It's also going to take some iteration to figure out what kind of research program you would like to have, and what kind of a mentor you would like to be. Even in your service role, where do you want to play your part within the department or the college? That's also going to take some iteration. And so being patient and knowing that it's going to take a few tries is important.
Thank you, Varsha. I think that's a wonderful point to end on. One of the things that drew me to teaching was knowing that I was always going to have more to learn, and that includes always having more to learn about myself and what works for me, as well as my students. So I think this is where we're going to wrap up the panel portion of this online workshop. So Kaylee has just joined us with some screen sharing. You've got a poll to complete. And Kaylee, uh, where are participants going to be able to find the link to the breakout rooms?
That link is going to be on our next slide, and I'm going to put that in the chat in just a second here. We're going to wait to see some poll answers trickle on through, and then I'll get that posted to everybody in the chat.
So while we're waiting, thank you to all our panelists for those wonderful insights and sharing your advice and experiences. And the breakout rooms I've been talking about, if you didn't get your questions answered in this panel and public Q&A, keep those questions in mind. In the breakout rooms, you'll have an opportunity for one-on-one or small group discussions with the panelists that will not be recorded. So that will be completely confidential.